Welcome to the Senior Safety Advice Podcast, your trusted source for expert guidance on aging safely and independently. Whether you're a caregiver, a family member, or a senior looking to stay secure at home and beyond, we've got you covered. From fall prevention and home modifications to financial safety and scam awareness, we provide practical tips to help you or your loved ones live with confidence. Tune in and empower yourself with the knowledge you need to navigate the challenges of aging. Let's make safety simple.
Hey there, everyone. Hello, how are you today? Welcome to the Senior Safety Advice Podcast. I am Esther Kane. I am a retired occupational therapist and a certified aging in place specialist. And today I want to talk to you about real life ways to help yourself or a senior loved one to stay safe and independent. And today's topic is about cognitive health, and specifically brain games and activities for mental sharpness. I mean, we all want to retain as much mental sharpness as possible. So we know that just like you want to exercise your body, you also want to exercise your brain and everything else. So you may be, as you're getting older, I do that a lot, and my partner Robin, we do that a lot with each other. And what was that person's name, or what was the name of that program again? And we feel like we're forgetting things more than normal, but we may not be. I don't know. You always need a third party to tell you. So how can you keep up that cognitive health? Or maybe you're noticing it in a senior loved one. How can you help them to keep up their cognitive health? How can you keep up your own cognitive health? So the first thing I want to talk about is even understanding cognitive health. And it's basically your ability to think, to reason, judgment. One of the things that I learned in working with older adults as an occupational therapist is that reasoning and judgment seem to be one of the very first things to go. And I'm not sure why, if it's just a cognitive thing, if your biases get, more so as you get older. I think there's a lot of different factors that get involved in that. But that is all having to do with your cognitive thinking, and you want to keep that as sharp as possible. So as we age, it's totally, totally normal for things to slow down a bit. We all have to acknowledge that and accept it for your own safety. Because if you try to do things beyond your physical and mental capabilities, that's where accidents occur. Again, your reasoning and judgment. Oh yeah, I can climb up that ladder and fix and clean out that gutter. Well, maybe not. Maybe your balance isn't as good as it used to be. Maybe your strength is not as good as it used to be. There's so many different factors. So you want to stop and think before you take an action. But the problem really comes, or it's a significant problem, when it becomes frequent. I mean, if you just forget your keys every now and then, that's normal. If you forget someone's name, that's normal, especially if it's something that you've always had trouble with. But if it becomes a frequent thing, if it's a constant thing, then there's a problem. If you are searching for something, I don't know, something innocuous, like your keys, like your car keys, and you end up finding them in the refrigerator versus where they should be, then that's an issue. That is a sign that something is going wrong. So you want to try to prevent that. If you notice that, you definitely want to get tested. You want to have your physician take a look at you. Maybe he'll recommend specific types of tests or medication, or maybe it's the medication that is causing that. You don't know, but you don't know until you go to the doctor. So you always want to watch out for those signs. But in addition to that, there are things that you can do to keep yourself sharp. Now, I know some friends who are constantly taking college classes. I think that's an excellent way to keep your mind sharp. You're not just reading the same thing you've always read. You're not just doing the same thing you've always done. You're challenging your brain with something new. And it could be anything. It could be new recipes. It could be learning a new language. It could be learning a new hobby or a new skill. It could be studying all these new AI programs that are coming out. It could be anything, as long as you're challenging your brain to learn something new. Doing the same thing over and over again doesn't challenge your brain. So I know a lot of games say that they're very good for older adults. Things like crossword puzzles and Scrabble, Mad Lib type of games, language type of games. Those are fine. There's nothing wrong with them. But do they really challenge you as far as cognition, especially if you've been doing them for years and years? I'm not so sure that they do, because you already have that skill. So you want to do something completely different. Maybe, the visual games, the VR games, where you have to do certain movements along with, your cognitive thinking about, it's like trying to get out of an escape room. You have to find where to get the key so that you can get into the castle, so that you can save the maiden, things like that. It's forcing you to think outside of the box of how you normally would think. Those kinds of things are very, very good for increasing and for exercising your brain. Reading poetry that you've never read before, but not just reading it, trying to comprehend it, belonging to a poetry club maybe, where you dissect the poem and you figure out what it really means. What did the author really mean? Anything like that, where you're forcing yourself to think outside of how you normally would think. A lot of people like the Words with Friends, and that can be a great way to connect with others. This app, Words with Friends. I think it's okay. Again, if it's something that you do every single day, then you're not really challenging yourself, because it's kind of the same type of thing. You're going down the same road to get to work, and then you're coming home the same road. But if you were to take something, a different road or a different route, a different way, then you're challenging yourself to figure out how to get to where you need to get to without the GPS. Although I personally can't go anywhere without the GPS, so I don't know if that's a good analogy or not. Memory challenges are extremely good. One of the things that I was thinking of was a tray game, where you place 10 household items on a tray, and someone shows them to you for 1 minute, and then they cover it up. And then you have to see how many you remember. Are you going to remember all 10 or 3 or 4? And you want to try to keep improving that. And every day or every other day, however often you do it, you want to use different items on there. And it doesn't have to be 10. It can be 5 items or anything like that. But those types of games you can even play in a group setting to see who can get the highest score, kind of thing. But that's basically a memory game. And it's the same thing. You can do the same thing with photos, magazines. You can look at a picture. How many things can you remember from that picture? It would be the same type of thing. And that's a very good those are 2 very good memory type of games. Sudoku and logic puzzles are also great. But again, if you are already very good at math, if you're already good at logic, you're just tapping into something that you've always been good at. So again, I repeat, you want to challenge yourself to do something you haven't done before. My mother was extremely good with math, and Sudoku was very easy for her. She loved doing it, of course, because it wasn't much of a challenge for her. But I would say, I'm not saying not to do them, but I am saying that it's important to do something you haven't done before. Look for games, look for activities, anything that you haven't done before, something that forces you to learn something new. I just spoke with someone yesterday, an older woman who had to learn how to she was a volunteer at an organization for older adults, and they were looking into some kind of a grant, and she had to learn how to apply for this grant, how to write the grant. I mean, it wasn't easy, but she did it, and now she has that new skill under her belt. I mean, did she get someone to help her, to mentor her on it? Yes, of course, no problem. Of course she did that, but it forced her to learn something new, something different. And we both agreed that that's really, really very important for cognitive health. Anything that you can do for strategy and problem solving, anything that requires planning, spatial thinking. That's why a lot of neurologists will say that jigsaw puzzles are extremely good for cognitive health, because even though each one is a puzzle, it's still something a little different. I don't think that that's the only thing. I don't think doing jigsaw puzzles every day is the only thing that you can do for your own cognitive health. I think you have to do it in addition to other things. But if you're going to do something, if you enjoy jigsaw puzzles, then definitely do them. I personally like the idea of the 3D jigsaw puzzles, because that's completely different than the flat ones. And that really forces you to look at things visually, perceptually, and of course to follow the instructions, which, that's always difficult no matter what you're putting together, right? Following instructions. The next thing, I think, besides games and leisure type of activities, I think you can use daily activities as part of a cognitive health exercise. And I'm talking, like I mentioned before, trying out new recipes, learning to play an instrument, or if you do play an instrument, learning to play a new piece of music that you haven't, done before. Gardening. Gardening requires a lot of planning. Well, good gardening requires a lot of planning, a lot of sensory stimulation that can also help with cognitive health. But it requires, making sure that you're putting things in the right place, sun, no sun, the time of year that you're planting, the time of year that you're replanting, all of that. It requires a great deal of work and learning about new plants to put in, be it flowers or vegetables or herbs or, whatever it is that you're planting. And then all the other creative arts that you can do on a daily basis, like painting or knitting or crafting. I mean, those are great activities. These are all activities of daily living that you can enjoy, that you can participate in, but challenge yourself at the same time by doing something different and new with it. I'm not saying you have to do something cognitively challenging 24/7, but it would be great to do at least one new thing a day. The other thing I want to mention, which I think is so very important, is that loneliness is quite damaging to your brain. I mean, it can play a lot of games with your brain. According to the U.S. Surgeon General, a previous one, not the one we have now, loneliness is as damaging to your brain as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. He was talking about a study that showed that. And social interaction is, a lot of people may think that, oh, I don't really need that. I don't need to go out with my friends, or if I have any friends, I don't need to go out and meet new people, all of that. But it really is one of the most underrated brain boosters. It's not something a lot of people push. They'll say things like read more, watch documentaries, stimulate your brain with all the things I mentioned before, games, activities, all of that. But socializing is an absolute brain booster, even if you do it, FaceTime, if you do it virtually, if you go out to a park and talk with people or a grocery store, anything at all. as long as you can continuously stimulate yourself with conversation with others on the phone, anything at all. You don't need a crowd. You don't need a lot of people around you. Just one conversation a day with someone can make a huge difference in your brain health. You can play a game together. You can invite storytelling, talk about a book or a movie. You can use video calls, as I said before, to connect with family and friends. Have at least one person a day that you communicate with. Doesn't have to be the same person every day, of course, but I think that's a wonderful way to do it. Watch a movie you normally wouldn't watch. Watch something that is, just fun and crazy. And there's even so much on YouTube that you can watch with someone. You can make fun of it. You can talk about it. You can discuss it. You can find historical facts about it, all kinds of things. There's so much that you can do just by taking a simple activity and expanding on it. I'm talking about like watching a movie, I don't know why I'm thinking Streetcar Named Desire. Okay, so that's an old movie, I know, but I like old movies. So let's say you're watching that. You can look up online, on your phone, whatever, what were some of the challenges that the director, the producer, the actors had in making that movie? What are some background stories of that? Where was it filmed? Who came up with the story? Who wrote the story? What's the actual, meaning behind the story? How did the actress feel? The character, I mean. How did the actor feel? And just so on, exploring stories like that of just a simple thing like watching a movie can expand your curiosity about that particular one little thing. And the same thing with books and with art and music. Finding out the background of anything, I think, is a wonderful way to challenge yourself to become, to help your cognitive health. It's a little different if you are dealing with dementia or if your senior loved one is dealing with dementia. In those cases, the brain is already compromised and you want to steer towards accommodating the abilities and trying to minimize the disabilities. So I'm talking about keeping tasks short and success-based. In other words, if someone with dementia is unable to put together 3 large puzzle pieces together, you're not going to present them with a 1,000-piece puzzle. It would be too challenging for them and they cannot get any success out of it. So what's the point? You're not improving their brain health because it's already been afflicted with dementia. So you want to emphasize what they can do and de-emphasize what they're not able to do any longer. You want to use visual cues, familiar objects. Don't correct mistakes. Just enjoy the moment that you're with that person. Redirect them if they become upset, if they start obsessing about something. And sometimes redirecting can just be verbal. Other times it means physically taking them and saying, let's go take a walk. Or, I meant to put this in the garden. Can you help me? Saying phrases like, can you help me? Or I really needed to do this. I need some help. Making purposeful events can really help someone with dementia to feel like they're still part of life. So instead of just sitting and doing nothing. I have a lot of other articles on dementia. I'll put them on the description below here on YouTube and also in the podcast in the soap notes. Daily routines are extremely important. I know a lot of older adults who set up a routine and follow it. It could be the time of day that they wake up, the time of day that they, eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It could be, every afternoon at 2:00, they sit down and take a nap or lay down and take a nap. Whatever it is, having a routine is an excellent way to keep, to just keep yourself consistent without that intensity of trying to figure out what to do. It makes you more focused instead of being scattered, of, doing every day, doing something so very different that you don't have a routine. A routine is an excellent way for everyone, really. It doesn't just have to be for older adults. A lot of younger adults who go to college, who stick to a routine, end up doing extremely well. No matter what school they end up going to, college or trade school or whatever. But the most successful people in business and in life have a routine. They stick to their routine as much as they possibly can. And that's very important. One of the books that you can read on that, I think it's called Atomic Habits. That's a great book that helps you to set up specific habits. And it is really about breaking down certain, larger habits into smaller ones. But it's also about establishing routines and sticking to them. All right, so I hope that this information was useful for you. I didn't want it to be too long. Obviously, give me your comments. Let me know what you think. What do you do to keep your brain sharp? Of course, subscribe to our podcast, to the YouTube channel. Let us know what we can give you in future episodes. What you're looking for. We're always looking for new material to put out there. I know I've been doing a lot of interviews lately, so I'm happy to get back to doing a regular podcast. All right. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate your time, and I will see you next time.
That's it for today's episode of the Senior Safety Advice Podcast, helping you and your loved ones stay safe, independent, and informed. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to subscribe and share it with others who could benefit. For more expert tips and resources, visit seniorsafetyadvice.com. And remember, staying safe starts with staying informed. Until next time, take care and stay safe.